Hey there, welcome to Synth Seeker. My name's Luke. So today is Music Making Diary number 4. And I'm actually going to build this in little segments as I go because I want to explain a few things on how I approach this. So where we're at is super fast recap. Go watch the previous diaries if you want all the details, but I am writing a piece of music. It's sort of a synth-inspired story music, proggy kind of thing. It's my style of music. It's what I do. And where we're at right now is I've spent the last couple of weeks generating ideas, turning those ideas into clips. And what I've done since the last diary is I have arranged those clips, and I don't mean arranged, I mean I've placed them in a sequence. I've selected the clips and put them together and put them in an order for the song that is shown here in the arrangement view. There are some, it's arranged in a way that I like. I like the way these clips move through. I'll give you a sound sample in a second, but they're not done. The rhythm track is just a steady loop. I have to do entirely new rhythm. I may change these instruments around. Some of the clips, I like what's happening harmonically, and I like what's happening melodically. But I want to develop it further, right? And so this is just the next step. Anyway, so let's just jump in and get started, all right? So this is the opening of the piece, all right? So what I do is there are 2 clips that contain most of the harmonic information. There's this synth part, right? And there is an associated bass part, okay, that's playing along. And what I do in Ableton anyway is I select both of those clips at the same time. So it loads them both into my clip view. I select everything, I copy it, and then I've already done this, I paste all of those notes out into, I make a new MIDI track that I call the analysis channel. Analysis is far too strong a word for what I do, more like flailing around in music. And I paste it in, all right? So this is what I'm looking at. Right, and if we play this, I've got this soloed and I've got it set up so it plays through a little E-piano, something very simple. This is what it sounds like. All right, so that's what I've got here, okay? And what I do is I look at this as it's playing and I'm saying, okay, what notes at any given time, so like in a vertical slice across the clip, what are these notes and do they make a recognizable chord or a chord that I think I understand? And I just find them on my instrument, in this case the push, but you could do it on a piano, keyboard, synth, whatever. And so I look at these, I look at both of the notes that are lighting up and I look at what's here, they're labeled, and I go, okay. And so the notes I'm actually playing here is, right? At least in this little segment, the first, couple 16th notes here, I'm in C minor, all right? So this sort of, if I was to say there's a chord implied by this sort of arpeggiation maybe, or this sort of, I referenced this in a previous video, this is deedle music. It's like Bach, right? Bach didn't always play chords like in a compy way, right? He sort of, ran little rhythmic patterns across chords and then changed chords over time. Anyway, so what's happening here is I'm playing right? So what is that, right? Well, this is an octave, I can drop that out. This is an octave, I can break it down. So what is that? Am I in C minor or E? What am I in? E minor. So that's a sus2, and this, right? Is that the 6th? Sus2 add 6? I don't know what that is, and I don't really care, actually. I like that sound. There's tension being added, right? That's tension, and that's tension as well. So what's happening is, sometimes if you smack that chord out, it sounds very tense, right? And so what's happening in my music here is that if you take these notes and you take some of them, say the more tense ones, and you bring them up an octave, instead of these, you go here. It softens it a little bit. It's still, the tension's still there. And what I'm doing here is that's what's happening in this sort of segment here. All right, and then the bass is providing sort of a foundation for where that is. Now, there's also what's happening here are what I may incorrectly refer to as motifs. There's a rhythmic motif here. If you look at this, there's a, there we go. So there's a, so these notes, right? This. That is, there's an ongoing motif throughout this thing of these notes going. You know, not exactly that, but that happens in my music a lot. And so I will look for that in this clip and, you know, think about accentuating it or making it stronger, you know, changing some of the later parts of the clip to also mimic that motif. All right. So this, I'm not going to change all that much. I like the way this is, right? What'll happen is over the course of the piece, this gets played more than once. And so I will make variations. In this case, it repeats twice. So what I'll probably do is go through this clip and go through the clips that are the source. This is the analysis clip. I'll go to the actual clips and basically modify that so that modify the original sources, right? The synth, that chroma polaris, and then the bass part, right? So right, so that I'm happy with that, right? It's of course the very first clip I ever wrote, so it got the most attention. So for this project. And so that's the idea. So what's going to happen over the rest of the day, and I'm not going to record all of this, I'll record some highlights out of it and then share it with you guys, is I'm going to go through each of these sections, all right, looking for, pulling out the MIDI data out into this little analysis clip, looking at what notes are playing, sort of understand, you know, is there a chord sequence in there that's implied or, you know, there literally, are there rhythmic and harmonic motifs that I want to make note of and then either accentuate or maybe pull out and reuse later, right? Because some of these, you know, clips in one section of the piece, if there's a motif there that's really strong, has a good hook or something I like, I'll use it again in later clips, maybe completely unrelated clips, and I will harmonically sort of fit that motif in there or mimic the previous motif to try and make the whole piece have a sense of self and a sense of, gives it an identity, right? So that's what's going on. I'll see you in a second. Okay, so we're back. So I'm working on this section that I'm calling verse. There are no lyrics here, but, and what's happening is there are basically three instruments playing. There's this bass part playing, there is a brass synth part playing, and then there's this e-piano part playing. Now this verse section happens twice in the song. The first time it happens, the brass part and the bass part are playing together. All right. And that's for 4 bars basically. And then for another 4 bars, the theme, the chord progression sort of repeats, which I don't have a clue what the chord progression is here. These are pulled out of my noodles, right? And I haven't done any analysis. I don't plan to. But in the first part, it's bass and horns. In the second part, the repeat of the verse is Rhodes piano and bass. Okay, so bass and horns, and then bass and Rhodes piano. And I'm going to play you the horn part, I'll just play the section where the horn and the bass are playing. Here you go. All right, so if you go to the previous diaries and hear the snippet there, that's basically what I had in the last diary. This came out of a noodle. I pulled it out. Now, but it plays twice, and I just had it looped previously, and I knew I wanted to go back and tweak the repetition the second time this repeats to have some variation. I want to lay my hands on every part of the piece, right? So basically I just took this loop, I duplicated it, all right? And then did some variation here. And I sat in here with my note, playing notes on the push and moving notes around in MIDI till I had a variation that still had the same feel and the same groove and the same chord progression, implied chord progression, but was different. And then has a transition over to the E-piano part. Now the E-piano part does... right? And so that was the loop that came out of the noodles, right? So I've duplicated it again, and over here made some variation in some of the note selection. It still works with the bass. It's internally consistent, right? And then on the bass part, because I've got basically I had the same bass loop looping for 8 bars here, I went in, and it's still essentially the same bass loop in that it provides the same rhythm fundamentals that I want. But I've gone in and very slightly tweaked a few notes. Here I muted a few notes and held one, muted a few others. And the second half on the 6, 7, and 8, 9 bar repetition part, actually it's 16 bars, but on the basically the third and the fourth repetition, the entire phrasing loops 4 times over the course of this. Made some additional changes. So over the course of the horn part and the E-piano part that plays, now each have their own variation, and then the bass line has some slight variation to keep it interesting, right? I don't want the listener to get bored by having too much literal repetition, exact duplication. Okay, so here's this bit for you, and what we're listening to is this, which, oh my God, what a mess. So here we go. Visually, good luck following it, but here we go. Right, that's the first repetition. This one will have alterations. And then the E-piano. So that's how I go in. What I do is I take what was loops drawn out of that noodling, and when I do the arrangement, I just loop them, right, and let them repeat, and so I get the feel for what's happening. And then I go in, and if it was looping for 4 bars, I'll make it a full 4-bar clip that starts with just 4 copies, but then go in and lay my hands on them and tweak them together. Now, later in the piece, when verse plays again, I actually layer the horn part and the E-piano part on top of each other completely. And so that's when this feel comes back, when verse returns later on, we actually combine the horn part and the E-piano part, and they play simultaneously, right? And it looks like cacophony, but it actually but it works. And I may go through and thin some of this out, but it sounds like this. And it's busy, but that's my music. My music tends to be busy. I like that Bach-esque deedle, got a lot of stuff going on, but the chords are implied. They're all monophonic lines for the most part. And so the layered part sounds like this. And so because the top part, the horns and the E-piano are so busy and so much is going on, the bass line here gets dramatically simplified. The bass line isn't doing anything crazy. It's just doing roots. It's going to do roots all the way through, okay? Or foundational notes, right? I'm not actually sure what the chords that are being implied here. I haven't gone and figured them out, and I probably won't. I don't intend to. I like the way this section sounds. So I don't have any need to go in and analyze for what chords are happening there. Later, if I repeat this and want to modulate it, I'll go and do that analysis if I want to change the key or move it around. But that's it. Let me keep digging around, and I'll come back and visit you later. Okay, here's the last segment for this diary. So where we were was we've got these two verse sections. We've got verse the first time we use it. We've got the second time we use it. And the first time the horn part and the E-piano part are separate. The second time they're layered. And I've got this sort of transition between the two. In general, I would say that the verse is a sort of low energy part, relatively low energy. It's telling a bit of a story. It's like exposition. And then I've got this rising section after it, followed by something like a bridge. And that something like a bridge is turning into this real synth wavy sort of texture from a harmonic perspective. It's almost like Saturday morning cartoon music. I don't know, heroic stuff. So let me just play you this rising section. So what we've got is we want to, I've got this sort of low exposition section. I want to rise up to this sort of synthwave cartoon part, which then will go back into the verse section, but the verse section's energy will be higher because we've got the layers of the horns and the E-piano happening at the same time. And what I've done is, well, let me just play it. Here's the rising section. All right, so we've got this rising section, and what I've done is, I'm using this rhythm temp track, just very simple loop going over and over. But I want to start reminding myself what I want this to do emotionally. So what I generally will do is either go in and change the drum stuff, or I'll add some loops just to sketch it out. And that's what I'm doing here. I've grabbed some stylus RMX loops, and I've just put them in, sliced them up a little bit, played with their sort of volume curve so that they come in over time. And I want this sort of rising sort of behavior, emotional behavior here. And then I want this real synthwave sort of pop kind of drum part behind that, that sort of synthwave climax here. So what we've got is it's going to start doing this. So this stuff's coming in. All right, so it's almost cliched, but I'm not going to use those loops in the final production. But it makes me laugh. It makes me smile. So I enjoy, especially the electronic tom fill at the end there. Let me just play that little bit. That's It's just cracking me up. At the very end of the segment, you're going to hear this. There we go. I don't know where this is going to go. It's getting a little cheesy, but we'll tone it down and we'll bring that back in. So anyway, I think this is it for the diary for today. So I've shared with you how I sort of start doing analysis, how I pull MIDI out into a sort of consolidated clip, and then I can look at it and decide where's it going. And then I arrange this stuff out. Anything that's a 4-bar loop that happens more than once in the system, in the composition, I will basically take that duplication, print it out to be whatever length it needs to be, and then go in and tweak notes to do interesting things. I look for motifs. So the main, a very common motif in this piece is bum ba-dum, or bum bum, like a run up, 1 2 3 ding ding, and there's sort of a syncopated 2 notes at the end of that run. That's happening a lot. And there's a lot of deedle stuff going on where you've got a lot of Bach-like sort of counter melodies playing, implying a chord. That's what's happening here. So I'm just going to play up to what I've shared with you today, just as a whole, and then I'll call it a day. So here it goes. This has no name yet. I still got to work on it. That comes last, names and the story behind it. And so I left you got a little tail of the at the end there of the sort of the come down section there. We're going to bring it all down a bit and then just so that we can raise it all up again. Anyway, so that's about it. This is diary number 4 for music making. Working on this prog piece, synthwave story music thing, Synth Seeker music, Luke music. And that's about it. I'm having a blast. I'm really enjoying doing this. I like this format of video. And I've watched my subscriber count take a nosedive though. So whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm not like it's monetized or anything, but the right people are enjoying this, and that's fine. If this really isn't your thing, hey man, stick with me. I'm only going to do this for so much. This is not the future of the channel. I am going to go back to hardware and software synth seeking directly, but I needed to get some music done. So that's what this is about. So, hey, thanks for spending time with me, and maybe I'll catch you next time. And as always, you have been watching Synth Seeker. Have a great day.